There is a little bit of a secret sauce to being able to give people the experience. And in that secret sauce, part of that is because it's just not about square footage at times. It's about area, it's about the type of business and the demand for that business. When you're in a position where there's something that you have to do, you get creative.
Well, welcome to the Cash Flow Bros podcast, Mark.
Oh, thank you, Todd.
This has been like a dream come true because we've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like when I started creating like the vision for doing these interviews, you were like number one on my list because we've had such a long-standing friendship slash mentorship slash just business relationship. And so I purchased some properties from you a while ago, but
Yes.
where our story kind of started was your son and I worked together.
That's right.
And I kind of learned that you were in construction and kind of all that. And when I was looking for my house in Homewood, so I was selling what was going to be, or not selling, I was keeping my current house.
Yep.
And I was looking for a second house to turn my old house into a rental. So it kind of was the beginning of the, genesis of this investing journey. And I really didn't know much about houses. I didn't know much about what made a good house, what made a bad house. And, you were so kind. You took time to, out of your busy schedule, you run a construction company, you have rentals. But I started looking at houses, and every once in a while I would be like, hey, I'm pretty serious about this house. Would you come take a look at it? And you would drop everything to look at one house, which retrospect, I'm like, who was I to ask that? It's pretty bold of me to ask you to come. But we would walk these houses, especially in Homewood, they're 50s houses and they're kind of old, and you got to kind of know what has solid bones and what doesn't. And you'd be like, you'd point out, hey, see, look at the crown molding here. It's kind of shifting. Here's some cracks. Let's look in the crawl space.
I remember that.
And you really taught me the nuts and bolts of how to vet a house. And so we did that a few times, and then I kind of went on my way, and I started crawling in crawl spaces and started looking at houses. And I got one under contract. Sorry, this is a long story, but it means a lot.
I remember.
I got one under contract. And I was like really excited about it. I was like, hey, could you come look at this one? Because we have it under contract. And it was in West Homewood. Mm-hmm. And we show up that day, and it is pouring rain, which I honestly love when you look at a property pouring rain for this very reason. And there was the grade of the front of the house went to the back, and the grade of the back of the house went to the back of the house, the back.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know what, probably 5-6 inches of standing water.
Yeah.
And they had encapsulated crawl space, and you're like, that's why they did it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, the only way to fix this is to create a big pit, do a sump pump, and pump it back out to the street.
Yeah.
You said, don't buy this house.
I remember that clear as bell. I remember the house.
Yeah. And I walked away. I was like, that's wisdom. I even locked it up for a pretty good deal because it ended up selling later for about $7,000 more than I had it under contract.
Hey, Todd, I remember that day, and I remember you walking away from that, and it spoke to me as this guy's serious. Because I've talked to people about certain things, and they're just going to do what they want to do. And I saw a heart of humility in you, and that was pretty amazing.
I appreciate that.
I remember that.
So then fast forward, I think it was another month or two, and I found a house, and I was like, I think it's good.
Yep.
And you walked it, and you're like, yeah, like it's got good bones.
Good bones. I remember that.
Moved on it. That's what I was looking for, good bones. So I just thank you again so much for taking the time to teach me. And I've used that skill set and continue to, like, as I talk to other contractors and all that, I continue. But that was like the genesis of me understanding how to look at a house and what makes a good house and what makes a bad house. And so I really, really appreciate that. So long intro, but that's where we started,
Yeah.
and since then we've done some real estate deals. We have a lot of conversations about life. And so I was just super excited to have you. You're super wise with a lot of things you tackle. And so thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored, and thanks for the great intro. And as funny as I remember you calling me, and we were acquaintances, sort of, and through Joel.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is a friend of Joel's. I'm gonna do everything I can. But what impressed me was look at a house, talk through it, good decision. look at a house, talk through it, good decision. And I watched you repetitively take the information, and I always say it this way, I don't think we have a lack of information. I mean, it's everywhere. Any second we want it, we have a lack of application.
Yeah.
And I saw you as a young man applying the things that, as an older guy, I'd walked through, and I think it kept you from stubbing your toe, things you didn't have to do. So that's a heart of humility, and that's great leadership.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, now we're friends.
Now we're
without
friends,
Joel.
yeah.
That's good.
So I want to talk about you have investments. You kind of built a portfolio primarily in the Midfield, Hueytown area. I bought some of those from you.
Right.
Well, I almost bought Hueytown,
Yep,
but
yep.
that interest rates kind of crushed that deal,
sure
unfortunately.
did.
But I want to talk about a little bit about Hueytown, like how you kind of the genesis or the start of building your portfolio. Because when we have talked, I think it just started with like one or two, and I don't think you had the idea of like, I'm going to own X, but it just kind of opportunity after opportunity fell in place. Talk me through like the beginning of the portfolio building to where you were like, okay, this all is making sense. I'm going to actually keep doing this.
Sure. I'll make this quick because it's a long story. Won't get into the details. But, back then we were building a business, construction, and taking every penny we made and pouring it back into the business. And I remember thinking one day, I need to put some money back. So I started putting, $1,500 a month back.
Right.
It doesn't sound like much, but after a few years, I remember having $4,000 and thought I have arrived, and had a whole $4,000. And
isn't that crazy? My first 10 grand that I saved, I never thought I'd get there.
Never.
And then when it happens, now it's like 10 grand it's still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that seems a lot less daunting. But that first 10K was like, I don't know if I'll ever save that much money. Isn't that wild?
Yes. Principle of small investments and consistency,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we ended up buying a house, and I didn't have the money. So I created a relationship with a bank. I actually did a renovation for the branch manager. I put my accounts there, and it was a small bank. I think there were only 4 of them at that time in the Birmingham area. So I built a great relationship with the one in Hueytown.
Yeah.
And then when I got my $4,000, I was able to go in and sit down face-to-face versus just plugging in information on a spreadsheet, and was able to explain the idea of creative financing to use that $4,000. And with her help, we actually were able to borrow, and I took that $4,000 as a down payment. We did a subject to appraisal on the first one, which basically means that we said we bought the house for $30,000. It was going to take me $10,000 to fix it up. The value was $90,000, so I borrowed 80% of the $90,000, gave me the margin to do the remodeling. And in a sense, even though air conditioning unit may cost me $5,000, when I sent my invoice in, or actually sent my estimate in to get the loan, I made sure that was an $8,000 number, and I built margin in every category.
Because it filtered through the construction company.
It went to the construction company. So at the end of the project, I was able to pull my $4,000 back out. And then I'd stopped. I was very conservative, so I didn't pull the rest of the 80%. I left the money in the house as equity. And then I came at the end of it. I remember finishing the house. I got my renter for $600 a month in there. And I looked in the bank, and there's my $4,000 again. I thought, well, that was like a magic trick, I wonder if I could do that again. And so we did it again, and we did it again and again and again. I got to where I did one every month for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I decided that's enough, and I hit the brakes. And then, but I eventually went into some commercial buildings and other things, investing. But that was sort of the beginnings of how we ended up doing that, creative financing.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I mean, I think, at that time, the creative financing or different shifting funds around was not as common. Like YouTube University is out there, and that concept is very, very well known. But I mean, when you were
Back
doing
then,
it, there wasn't the information as much.
No,
So that's
I had no
awesome.
idea what I was doing.
You're just like, hey, let's figure it out.
I just, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I like that because when you're in a position where there's something that you have to do, you get creative.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that, and it keeps me anchored.
Yeah.
So
I think one thing I remember you saying a while ago when you were talking about bidding on properties and everything, you really knew your buy box. Mm-hmm. And you knew your area. It's not like you're like, hey, I'm going to go over to Center Point because there's a good deal over there. You lived in Hueytown. You knew Hueytown and the adjacent areas.
Yeah.
And you stayed there and you knew the type of house you needed to buy. You knew what your construction crew could do well. And I remember you saying, you're like, I would go to auctions or different stuff and people would be bidding and I would nab it up. I'd say 10 grand more than everybody else because I know it's worth it.
That's right.
Because you knew the buy box. You weren't playing around.
Yep.
And I think that is like such a testament to the niche. The riches are in the niches. As we're kind of moving the ball forward, you didn't get wavered by the shiny object syndrome in other parts of the town. Like
That's
you really,
very true.
really built. Excuse me. So you have several commercial properties.
Yes.
I'm not talking about when we talk about your current buildings and all that kind of stuff, like the bigger stuff, but I'm talking about the commercial stuff that you own in Hueytown.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
How has that been different, and where did you start branching into those smaller commercial stuff in Hueytown? And I feel like you said those have been your more solid performers, but talk me through the pivot there, or was it just opportunities came up, or how did that work?
Yeah, I think the one thing that scares me in a younger generation of investors sometimes, unless they have a big safety net of finances through some relatives, is they jump into it so hard, so fast, and they want to get there quickly. And I think there's something to be said about the slower process of accumulating wealth over a period of time.
Yeah.
There's a way to grow more organically, and then there's a way to scale. And I think you need to grow organically until you get your stabilization time, and then go ahead and hit the gas and swing for a triple. But you got to get those base hits in.
Yeah.
But I did the same thing with residential to commercial. So I knew the area. I stayed in the area. I looked at houses out of the area and then made decisions. Why would I travel over there when there's so much opportunity here?
Right.
And then when the commercial properties became available, again, I did the studies. I knew what was available. I kind of had a rhythm. I knew and studied what the lease market was, because it's just not about square footage at times. It's about area. It's about the type of business and the demand for that business. And the size of the units was a big deal back then. I remember leasing one building as a whole piece, and it really was great for 2 years. But when the tenant moved, it was almost impossible to release it. So I divided it up into 3 units that were the right size for the area and the businesses that wanted to be there. Nobody wanted 4,000 square feet. They wanted 1,500 square feet. And it stayed rented when I divided it up.
Yeah.
So just got to know the market, know the area, the demand.
Is that the commercial building we were working on, or a different one?
That was one of them. It's
That was already divided, though.
It was already divided.
Okay,
yes.
gotcha. So this is a different one you were talking about.
Yes, this is the first building I bought.
Yeah.
And rented it as one whole unit. And like I said, it's just the area there wasn't a demand for that size of a unit. And actually, when I divided them up into 3 smaller units, I got more per square foot, because then the ability to sustain that rent was easier on those smaller boutique companies.
Yeah. Were you triple net on the first lease that was renting the whole, or were you not triple net?
No, I did not.
Okay. So
I didn't know what the term was.
He's like, I wish I knew net.
That triple net. I mean, what's triple net? I mean, I don't. So no, yes.
So then when you divided it up, you basically still had those costs already built in.
Yeah,
I did. So you were already taking care of the roof.
I was green.
Yeah.
I did inside, outside. You guys take care of the inside. I take care of the outside. I'll put the roof on, heating and air systems, but everything else inside's yours. Okay. So I kind of set it up that way.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you kind of made that transition, still have your single family stuff, started adding in that. Talk me through then where the vision, because currently you have a building going up You have one in Trussville, and you have the one off of 280.
Yes.
The one off 280 is Dean, right? Or no, is it
The Lindsay.
The Lindsay, that's
Well,
right.
it's off,
and then
yes.
Dean is the one in Trussville.
Dean,
Dean-
the Cahaba is in Trussville.
Okay.
The Cahaba.
I'm getting them all mixed
the
up.
Lindsay buildings, right close behind Grandview area.
Okay.
And then the Dean is off the Colonnade Parkway,
Right.
which all of that's 280.
So you basically had all these side investments, single family homes, some commercial in Hueytown. Where did the vision for building the Lindsay building come from? Was it surely because your construction company is housed out of it, but you were surviving before without a building?
Sure. That's right. That's right.
So where did that vision to create a co-working space underneath, put your construction company on top, where'd that come from?
Right. So we decided to buy a little piece of property in Patchwork Farms with a little house, and I was getting ready to tear it down and renovate it and build an office. As our commercial company grew, there was a little bit of a demand. I didn't realize how much, but there was a little demand to have some sort of block and mortar stability where somebody can come to an office, because if you're doing a $100,000 remodel, you can meet them at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're doing a $8 million downtown loft project renovation, they want to come talk to you.
Yes.
They want to see some stability, and so we decided to build a really nice little office. It didn't work. We kind of stumbled across the 2.5 acres we're on now, bought the property, and the idea was to lease the bottom to kind of help a little bit with the rent. We took the upstairs and built out the bottom. Or actually didn't build it out. We left it white box.
Okay.
Well, COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so on the back corner, we decided to build out some office space and lease individual offices, something I heard about. You know what? Again, green, didn't understand, didn't know, even though it was out there.
You hadn't heard of WeWork, right?
No, I'm not even aware. I'm thinking I'm the first one on the planet that's ever seen this, right?
Right.
So we decided to lease these offices, and my gosh, they leased. We found out that people did not want the desk because of COVID, so we got rid of those, and we did private offices. It leased out. And so we decided, well, if that worked, let's build the next wing. We did, and before it finished, we leased it out. And then we decided, why not? We'll do the other one. So we ended up kind of building it out as we went into co-working, and then we had a waiting list. So then the opportunity came in Trussville, and then on the Dean that I'm doing now, it's just the demands there. I've studied it. I've seen the boutique environment. There's a little secret sauce to it that seems to be really, I guess, relative for today, and I think for the next at least 10 years. So we built the next one, and we've already got over 65% of it leased out, and I'm not done yet. So
That's awesome.
It's a real blessing.
It is interesting because you hear about the commercial space getting hammered right now with rates and with some of maybe people working from home, but I feel like that is in the mass corporate, huge square footage office space type situations, but smaller teams who need versatility, like, still need a space,
Sure.
And I mean, I'm thinking about this summer, I work from my home.
Right.
But last summer was tough.
That's exactly right.
And I'm trying to figure out a solution for summer, because when the kids are home, I mean, it's going to be difficult to concentrate, focus, get the deals done that I need to do. So, I actually visited Chick-fil-A's offices this last year, and they actually don't have assigned offices. So, but they have office space, and they have places for smaller meetings. They have places, pods for individual,
Right.
and they've gone to a place where it's flex space. And so no one has, not even, I don't even think like upper management has assigned offices.
So smart.
But everybody can flex in the space, use it, and that's really kind of what you're providing is a team of 10 can say we need 2 offices, and that's their flex space. And that boutique custom, fit what we need, not the other way around, and then lease out the stuff and have huge overhead. I agree is going to do well.
It works for everybody. It really does. I think one key for us, though, is I love the idea of where Chick-fil-A is doing that because it's theirs.
Yeah.
So it's really smart, develops great teamwork and culture. where we have mixed businesses, maybe 20 businesses in one building.
Yeah.
Why we have private offices. People have their security with
Yeah.
filing cabinets and their storage, so they have a private keyed office and all the flex space as well.
That's
and
awesome.
so that's kind of been the big key.
So let's talk back through. I'm going to start really getting your brain ticking on. You did COVID. You survived COVID.
We did.
Personally and as a business.
We did. Yes, we did.
So did you ever get COVID?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
I think I've had it once, maybe twice.
Yeah,
you
I
know.
think I maybe had it twice. I think I did.
I feel like everybody's like, the first time I got tested, the second time I'm like, I'm sick. Let's
Yeah.
I'm sick. I'll just,
If you don't get tested, you really never had it. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like.
But talk me through the arc of pricing. Construction labor went up,
Mm-hmm.
and then materials went up. I was talking to someone the other day about the labor, and I don't necessarily agree with. I'm kind of baffled as how they consider this labor, but some people just take the cost of the construction materials and then they just times it by a percentage, and that becomes their labor. Which is really, I don't think it's an accurate model, but that's what
kinda
some guys do.
Antiquated.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's
yeah.
I think it's like, more low end residential, like,
I built a deck
yeah.
back then. When I used to build decks, that's the way you did it.
Exactly.
That's right.
So, but then, when all those prices skyrocketed, then labor skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And then all these people are expecting, oh, well, I go to work for this now. And now that prices are back down, the labor's not coming back down, which is really kind of interesting in some pockets, I think.
Yeah.
But on your commercial side, you do some residential for your construction company. Talk me through, let's talk about first the costs of materials and how they've kind of flexed and where you kind of see they're at now, what they were through COVID, and kind of where you see them going.
Right. Well, in our company, we're housed in one office, but we have a separate commercial. It's a separate company, even legally, than our residential.
Right.
So we do both residential and commercial. And I think on both sides, I may start with material because I think that's, like I said, that was the big spike.
Yeah.
And I think this is not just documented information, but generally speaking, there were areas that went up to 40 to 60% increase during that time. And has come back down, I think landed, we see in our work about a 25% increase since pre-COVID to post-COVID.
Which is still significant for a 2-year span.
It is. And I think it's a corrective thing too, because just like real estate market, everybody's making, 18% or whatever, and now you're down to an increase of about 10%. Well, then that's the normal rate, and people aren't used to normal.
Right.
They're used to the abnormal inflation that it went through over the last years. So I think you have that same dynamic happening with construction a little bit. It was a corrective thing.
Do you feel like, this is a side note, I feel like Birmingham, obviously COVID spiked prices across the board. Mm-hmm. But then you had like the Nashvilles, the stuff maybe out east or really west got hammered with huge negatives. We kind of stayed at like still 3% because we track, appreciation. And while the rest of the country was kind of hitting those negatives because they spiked so hard up.
Right.
I feel like Birmingham was almost undervalued before COVID.
Yeah.
And I feel like COVID kind of, some of it was inflated COVID prices, but I think some of it was just corrective.
I think so too.
Okay, gotcha.
I really do.
So prices are down to in the 20% increase from pre-COVID.
Yeah, probably I'm gonna say around 25 is what we've kind of plateaued. We've just seen our budgets where they were and the jobs that we were doing historical data to what we're doing now, and it's kind of right about 25%.
Did you change materials? Because I had talked to, there's an architect in my neighborhood, and he said he had to completely redo a building he was working on to go wood because steel was, I think it was unavailable.
Yeah.
It wasn't even it wasn't even an issue of
That's right. Steel.
They would pay the price. It was like you can't get it.
That's right.
So did you make any of those pivots during COVID?
Sure did.
Okay.
So yeah, it's still something I think that is people are trying to figure out how to land because you had projects that were priced pre-COVID, started, pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Finished afterwards. And there's really not any historical data to say this is what you do in that circumstance.
Yeah.
So you have, investors that are in difficult positions, contractors, and just saying, hey, how do we work together to resolve this so we can keep moving forward now? And I think that's where a lot of things, not everything, but some of the jobs that were maybe hard bid, that were lump sums and hard bids, that was where it was really difficult. Because then what do you do with this situation?
Yeah.
It's not the contractor's fault, but it's not the investor's fault. So it's tough.
And everybody's kind of
Just scrambling, like, what do you do?
dealing with it.
Hopefully working together. That's the goal. How can we help each other?
So what about labor? Where did you see it spike, and where do you think it's at now?
Yes, I want to say that in our company, we did not increase our labor costs just because materials went up. That's not how you bid properly. I think where you see the labor increase was the supply and demand of quality laborers, project managers, superintendents. And what began to happen is there became an overinflated value just to get somebody of quality. Well, now there's been a set price for even though the materials came down and all the expectations have come back to where they should. Sometimes the labor are still saying, well, I understand that, but this is what I make now.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to hire that person, you just got to stop and go, well, are you going to pay that now? See?
Yeah.
So it's supply and demand a little bit.
Yeah, or demand will start to ease off so much that they're willing to, like I was talking to a guy doing residential work, and he was like, I've got 3 showers, but they're $900 showers. Mm-hmm. Like that's what, it's just tile,
Right.
And his tile guy was like, no, my prices are, this is what I want to make. He's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Waited a few weeks. Guy calls him up. I think we can get those on the books.
Yes.
It's like, okay.
I think if you're honest, transparent, jokingly I say, when I was older, I liked the game of chess, or younger, I liked the game of chess. And I like all the, working around things. And as I gotten older, I said, no, give me checkers. Yeah. So we become very transparent, very simplistic. I think what you're going to see is people saying, hey, I really want quality of life over just a paycheck.
Yeah.
So where these people are making the amount of money they're making, sometimes these companies that when the work shifts, some of these people have to start traveling to continue that kind of income. And people are saying, wait a minute, I don't want to travel. So, well, that's the only way you can support the income you're hired in at. So now we're saying, look, is it quality of life, or where's your family involved in this? It becomes difficult.
What's the value?
Yeah,
that's interesting. So do you feel, and I had heard this, and I don't think I've personally seen this, so I have a question, that some of the tradesmen, when COVID hit, they on the tail end of their careers just were like, I'm just going to retire. Did you see maybe that upping the demand some, or know of any specific cases where that happened, or is that just?
In our company, we really didn't have that experience.
Okay.
All of even our subcontractors, they're people that we work with every day. We don't go out and just juggle and try to find the cheapest person. We want to find quality people do quality work, right? Yeah. And so in that, these people aren't going to leave us hanging. So we kind of didn't experience that. I heard that. I heard that did happen a good bit. People were just saying, hey, I'm 4 years from retiring. Why not just go ahead and step out now?
Yeah.
But we didn't experience that.
That's good, man.
Yeah. Very blessed.
Yeah, this is I'm curious, what do you feel like some of the principles that it's not like COVID happened and you're like, all right, let's get some principles set up in this company.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you did that, you're too late, right?
That's right.
But you have a vision statement, you have principles, you have the way you run the company. You and Ryan work together. Like you guys built something, and then COVID happened. You were prepared for this emergency. What do you feel like some of those things that you guys hold as values in your company helped carry you through?
Boy, that's a loaded question. I'm trying to think how to simplify that. I think the simple answer is, you almost stated it in your question, is when you create a culture that people want to be around. It's not just like going to work. I think all of our employees, they understand that they're not just employees. They feel the value of what they do and empowered to do. I'm a little bit of a control freak, so it's a little difficult for me, and I have to watch myself. But the ability to empower people to work inside their gifting gives them complete fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And if you can get that, then you get a buy-in at a level where they're enjoying being there. It's not about trying to find another job for $1.50 more an hour or a benefit. If there's a struggle, they have the freedom. They know they can come to us and say, I really am struggling because of this, and we're going to try to give them an avenue to get there. Sometimes we might get them there immediately and say, hey, we will take care of that for you.
Right.
Small thing. We had a single mom that, people do this all the time, but it's more of a heart issue than it is a manipulative issue. But, her heat and air system went out, and we, called our sub up. He gave us a good deal. We replaced it because we love her, not out of manipulation. And, I always say people catch what you have, not what you say.
Yeah.
So you can say all the right things. You can have all the right vision statements and core values and rally cries and all that kind of stuff. But if it isn't in the core of who you are and what you believe, and you're not experiencing that at home with your wife, if that's not going on there, then it's probably not going on in your company. Mm-hmm. And I love it. It says, if you can't be a ruler over your own house, how can you be a ruler over anything else? And I believe that to the core. Mm-hmm. So I love everybody that works with us as teammates and players, not as employees.
Yeah.
And I think that value and that culture is what gets that buy-in to work together. And if somebody finds a job that's better for them, if you have the right heart, if the heart's there, you should encourage them. And you should be happy for them to go to the next level where they get to use their gifting if there's not a place there in my company for them to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to get them to be better with or without our company. I prefer them to stay, but if there isn't an avenue, if I'm really believing what I'm saying, then I'm going to try to find that place for them.
And that culture and community, probably when all of these shifts happen, because sometimes, there were rapid shifts in pricing, rapid shifts in scope of work. It probably allowed everybody to rally around the common cause of like, okay, we got to pivot. We got to make this thing successful. We got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So talk me through what you got coming up. What are you working on right now? The big building, if you will.
The big building. Oh my gosh, we have got some fun projects coming in our commercial world. Some really custom things going on. Getting to be a part of some one-off ventures that I'm not going to say, but they're going to be a little iconic.
I know this podcast goes out to thousands of people, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like hush-hush, but it's kind of fun. We've got some entertainment districts, things like that we're going to have some ownership in, and so it'll be kind of really cool, fun stuff. I've got more co-working. I'm looking at maybe doing another 3 of these co-working buildings at different places.
Okay.
And again, it's about the heart. I love the people.
Yeah.
I love giving the people to succeed. And it's kind of weird, but every person who comes and gets an office there seems like they grow. And I just love that whole concept. So that's kind of my fun thing.
That's awesome.
So
are you strategically spreading those out across the city, or even looking at different cities for those co-working spaces?
That's a great question. There is a little bit of a secret sauce to being able to give people the experience they're getting at the Lindsay and the Dean,
right,
and the Cava. And in that secret sauce, part of that is location. The difficult thing is the difference between a retrofit and a new construction. The retrofit is where it's very difficult to develop the culture versus new construction designed architecturally to experience it when you see the building. Mm-hmm. So that's a toughie.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but we're taking that over. We're going to go after it.
Because was the Cahaba a retrofit?
It was a retrofit. The location is what gave it its history. It gave it its culture. The location, everybody knows where it was before, what it was before, and so I think that's the whole idea of the name. The Lindsay Building, you know all about Keith and the dean. That's my dad. There's these things strategically that gives us the story to connect people.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, there's several things that make up that secret sauce.
That's awesome.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. So we've kind of talked about scope of, where you kind of invested in all those investments, where you're kind of building these other buildings. I love to give insight into Birmingham specifically. Where do you feel like you are seeing projects and bids from a commercial standpoint start to, like, do you have a pulse on some of that of like, I'm seeing a little bit of extra activity here. People are talking about these pockets. People are talking about, things happening in these areas. We see a lot of stuff happening downtown. The hospital, they finally got that torn down, I think, and that project itself is probably going to still be 2 or 3 years, and we'll see if it actually comes to, I think it will, but you never know,
Right.
So where are you seeing kind of these flurries of activity happening in pockets that, are up and coming, or where commercial stuff is being talked about?
Right. I think Birmingham is so interesting. I've kind of looked at some other cities, and it seems like there's 1 or 2 strategic places that all this kind of starts to develop, and then it sort of grows out and around those areas.
Yeah.
And Birmingham seems to have its own little identity where our projects are diversified. There's, of course, 2nd Avenue. That's got a lot of cool things going on. There's over by Regents Field. We just did a nice big project over there. And we've got projects going over a little bit toward Pepper Place. There's some new things that we're going to be doing kind of in that area.
Yeah.
South Side, we're doing a super cool development right now in that area.
Okay.
So it's interesting to say. I almost see it more spread out than I do see it located in one spot. And I don't know if it's going to all come together, how that's going to work, but I'm watching it. Yeah.
I've felt that way about Birmingham too, and I think it's a strength and a weakness.
Yes.
Because you look at like Chattanooga, like they really like redid that downtown area, and there's like this hub, surrounded around that pocket, and everything's kind of, when the city was like, we're going to really change this around, it really came from that pocket. And everything developed from that. But Birmingham has, like you just listed off. I could think of 10 different locations that are being revitalized or in the process or further along in that revitalization.
Yep.
But they're all these separate pockets.
It is.
We don't really have this like river running through Birmingham that everything just like can hub around, or, like I think back in my hometown, or north of my hometown in Colorado, there's 16th Street Mall in Denver that was kind of this main focus of retail and all that kind of stuff. So in some ways it's kind of good because it's developing a lot of areas, but in other ways it's like the core economic push is not in one pocket. So it still feels like it's a slower
feels like a slow burn.
Yeah.
Kind of a little shout out to Trustful.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah, shout out to Trustful a little bit because I saw them focus. And
in that pocket. Yeah.
Yes, and they did such a great job. So a little bit of a shout out there. We just met with another municipality that we had the same meeting. And they were talking about, same thing, about 5 different pockets that they were going to develop. And after about an hour, I just threw a question out. I said, guys, why don't you take one of the most visible places you have and pour your resources into that area, develop it, and the other little 4 areas you're talking about have already got a small development. You can kind of clean those up and let them be organic, but let this be the entry when you come into the city, that this becomes the impactful moment that does bring the revenue and the people and the energy, the culture and the community, and let it spread out. And didn't get a great response on that. Hey, just my opinion. I don't know. But I see Birmingham a little bit like that. Could be good same thing. Can see some.
I agree. I think there's enough momentum that it is a slow burn.
Yeah.
I have high hopes for the future.
And Birmingham's
for
a
sure.
little smaller.
Yeah.
So you can connect a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah. But those are definitely different pockets, and it's good to be aware of those pockets, know why. I had Rob Malcolm in here last week. He was actually a big part of flipping Norwood.
Okay. Yeah,
And
yeah.
making, I mean, now you go into Norwood and you can spend $400,000 or $500,000
Yes.
in Norwood.
Right.
When 10 years ago, you could
Oh
pick
my
up
gosh.
houses for $20,000 and
That's right.
maybe resell them fixed up for 80 to 100. You know,
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yes.
it's just wild. So you have people who have vision for pockets and push it along, and I think there's a lot of momentum. But that's interesting. I mean, I've always said it's better to say one thing really loudly than a few things softly.
Yeah.
And
That's why I stayed in Hueytown.
yeah,
I mean, I just focused in one area.
Yeah.
And kind of started there organically. Yeah.
yeah. It's just a very good lesson, and I think it's sometimes about the no's rather than the yeses. Sometimes, you know. And one thing I want to circle back before we, you know, kind of close is, I think the application thing, I've carried that with me. I say it's a lot, almost to the point where now I own it. I'm like, I said one time. But no,
yeah.
it is so true. It's like we're not for lack of information
No.
of you know, YouTube University or different resources. It's just getting up every day and doing it. You know,
Yeah.
that's important. So
I always said it Christian wise, that if we did 10% of what we already knew in the Bible, we'd already be walking on water, you know?
yeah.
So yeah, it's application.
Yeah, it's so good. Well, thanks so much for the time and the insight into Birmingham and a little bit more of the commercial space, what's happening with, you know, co-working spaces. It sounds like you've been very successful in what would appear to be, you know, a lot of people working from home. You hear all these different things, but you've found kind of this, like you said, secret sauce of a need that you're fulfilling in a market where the shifts are actually probably needing that type of thing. And so I think that's incredible, and just super excited for the future and stuff. If people want to get a hold of your company to build something,
yes, Hancock Construction.
Hancock Construction, yeah,
There you go.
yeah,
That's right.
So we went through this whole episode, and you're like, "Wait, is this guy a construction guy or an investor or?"
Yes. Yes.
What is he? So, and super excited about the future of your company and all the things you shared. I mean, it's going to be incredible. So, but yeah, man. Appreciate
thank you,
it.
Todd. We love you and your family, and I know the things you're going to be doing are going to be great. They already are. Enjoyed hanging out with you, spending time with you. Always do.
Yeah.
And got a free cup of coffee, so I'm happy.
He's rolling. All right, take it easy.
Thanks, man.